Yeah, they're going through a lot there, and it's not good, not good. Anyway, so we should daven for them. That's for sure. Anyway, I mean, anytime I speak these days, one of the things that I need to connect to is the times we're living in. Otherwise, I think you ignore the elephant in the room. You know, there's Corona, and it's still here. We have no idea when post-Corona is going to happen, and even if it will happen, because I believe that Corona and the experiences we're going through are going to leave many, effects, long-term effects probably. Some of them may be good, and I sincerely hope that many of them are, but some of them will probably be challenging, let's say. And therefore, I will try to connect it. But what did not get published in the Shul paper was the title, which I did give, but I guess it crossed paths with the rabbi sending out the notices. And basically, the name of the title of the Shir is Behalotcha, the most tragic of the 7 books of Moses. Now, I was hoping that people would go, wait a minute, 7 books of Moses? We call it Chumashim. Chumashim from the word Chamesh. And we all know there are 5 books of Moses, but there is a opinion that there are 7, 3 of them in the book of Midbar. So that Bereshis is 1, Shmos is 1, Vayikra is 1, Devarim is 1, but in Bamidbar there are 3, and their juncture is in our Parsha. Hi, Janet. Okay. So why do I also call it the most tragic Sefer? Because until our Parsha, and at the beginning of the Parsha, the Jews have been going on essentially a triumphal march into Eretz Yisrael. There have been a lot of problems along the way, the biggest one obviously being Chet HaEgel, but basically we were forgiven for Chet HaEgel, even though, according to many opinions, we still carry the blemish of Chet HaEgel even to this day, and the punishment is meted out little by little over the generations. But still, that was not going to keep us from going into Eretz Yisrael, and it wasn't going to keep us from going into Eretz Yisrael the way originally planned. Originally planned, we were going to go in with the whole family of Moshe, Aaron, Miriam, the whole generation that left Eretz Yisrael was supposed to be going in to Eretz Yisrael. And in the Sfarim that came before, in Shemot, in Vayikra, and in Bamidbar up till now, were all the preparations, the building of the Mishkan, the learning how to work in the Mishkan, all of the activities in the Mishkan, which needed to be done in the Midbar when they had free time, before they would go into Eretz Yisrael and have to do the conquest and the dividing of the territory and whatever. So we were being trained in the Midbar for freedom, for working in the Mishkan, for setting up the tribes, how they would interact, how the Levium would act, how the Kohanim would act. That part, it sort of changed because of the Chet HaEgel. Originally, firstborns were going to serve in the Mikdash, and then that was lost because of the Chet HaEgel, and was taken over by the Levium. We have the whole inyan of the Pidyon, the redemption of the firstborn to the Levium so that they would take over the Avodah. So this is what's been going on until now. And we even, and up till, and if you want to look in your Chumashim, it pays to look at it. If not, it's okay, I'll describe. In Behalotcha, up to Perek Yud, Pasuk Lamed Dalet, we basically are getting ready to go into Eretz Yisrael. Not only that, but we're told how we're going to travel. The last thing that we learn about in the Psukim before that are how the Anan, how the cloud, which showed the presence of Hashem, which would be resting on the Mishkan, would then lift up. When it lifted up, we would lift up, get ready, pack, whatever, move on. When it would rest, we would rest. And we knew that that's where we're going to stay. We did not know at the time that that was going to continue for another 38 years. But at the time, the idea was that that's what we were going to be doing. We were going to travel according to the Anan. We were on our way in to Eretz Yisrael, and basically everything was set. And the conquest of Eretz Yisrael, because we would still be led by Moshe, would be totally miraculous. Our Mefarshim, our Chachamim say, we were going to go in, and basically Moshe would speak and everybody would run away. It was going to be essentially bloodless, and even bloodless on both sides because they wouldn't stand up against us. Moshe, with Hashem's presence, etc. You and I know that that was about to change. It seems to change in the next Parsha, but actually it doesn't, because the next Parsha is Shlach, which is sending the Meraglim. That appears to be where it changes, but it doesn't. It changes in our Parsha. And it hinges on two psukim. So up till Perek Yud, Pasuk Lamed Hey, we have setting up the Machaneh, how we're going to travel. The Mishkan is prepared. Everything's been built. We know how to take it up, and we know how to set up the Mishkan. We know how to take it down. We know who carries what. We're all set to go. And then comes the triumph. The two psukim, which are familiar to us, which are Pasuk Lamed Hey and Lamed Vav, which is easy enough to read because it's only two psukim. Vahi ben Haron vayomer Moshe, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha, v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha, uvnucho yomar, Shuva Hashem revavot alfei Yisrael. Those two psukim are surrounded by two upside-down nuns. And the nuns set them apart. The Mefarshim have different opinions about what does it mean that it's set apart. In what way is it set apart? Some say it's like parentheses, and it doesn't belong here. These are psukim, they're not in the right place, because that's going to happen much later. Of course, it never really does happen in terms of entering Eretz Yisrael. Some say, though, that this is a full sefer of the Torah. And therefore, the division then is that everything of Bamidbar until the Pasuk Vahi ben Aaron is a sefer, a pretty glorious sefer, a sefer of progress, of moving on. The whole beginning of Bamidbar is very upbeat. We're going, we're doing, we're working, we're setting it up. These two psukim, which are the epitome, the apex, and then all the rest of Bamidbar, which is downhill. And you have, in a minute, we'll see what else you have, but when you think of the next Parshiot, you have Shlach, right? So you have that, you have the problems with that. And you have the problem with Korach, and you have the problem with the women in Baal Peor, and you have the problem of Miriam speaking Deba, and then of course you have the deaths of Miriam and Aaron, and everything is falling apart. And of course the fact that they find out that they're not going to Eretz Yisrael altogether, which certainly has to have been a very traumatic experience, to find out that what you thought was going to happen when you left Mitzrayim isn't going to happen for you. And those two psukim are where it hinges. It's going up, it immediately goes down. Before we get to those two psukim, because there I'm going to talk about what the Netivot Shalom has to say about it. If we look at the words right after the second inverted nun, which are the first words after this apex of joy and happiness about how we're going to go, and the Aaron and Moshe, and the enemies are going to melt before us, are 6 very sad words, maybe the most tragic. Vayhi ha'am kimitonenim Ra be'oznei Hashem. And the Jews, the whole nation, were complaining evilly in the ears of Hashem. Here, everything is going great. Great, great, great. All of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, the Jews are complaining again. Now, we've had plenty of complaints, but water they have, mun they have. They're going into Eretz Yisrael. They're far from Egypt at this point. What are they complaining about? And the answer is, we're not sure we know. There are differences of opinion about what this complaint is. In a few psukim, we're going to hear their complaint about, we had much better food in Mitzrayim. We had leeks and cucumbers, and all we have is this mun, and it tastes like, it's not very good. I mean, it tastes okay. I mean, we know that it could taste like anything, but it seems it did not have the solidity of a good steak. And what they were missing was a good piece of meat. Now, it's interesting that though they seemed to miss meat, they had meat all along. I remember when I discovered this, a bunch of years ago, but not when I was a kid. I always thought in the midbar they ate mun, and then they got slav, which is this part where they get these birds that they eat meat until it's coming out of their ears, literally. And then they go into Eretz Yisrael. But all the years they were in the midbar, they got meat. Because it says so when they first get the mun, it says they had mun in the day, and they got meat at night. So if that's true, what happened to the meat? And why are they complaining? So some of the opinions are they had meat, but it wasn't enough. Or there were times when it stopped. It was there in the beginning, and then it stopped because they got used, they had the mun. Some say that the meat that they had was from them, and they weren't happy to use up their own things to get meat. Why doesn't God give me meat? Why should I use up my own? Don't forget, there were karbanot in the midbar. They did bring sacrifices. And a shlamim sacrifice is one in which the owners eat most of the meat. In fact, almost all of it. And therefore, they could have had a barbecue. They simply had to do it by the Mishkan. And remember, they're in the midbar. So even though when they were in Eretz Yisrael, they could be many, many kilometers away from the Mizbeach, in the midbar, they weren't that far away. And therefore, they could have had meat. The point is, there was meat, but they're complaining. Now, some people say, some of the Mefarshim say, that when it says the nation was complaining, that refers to the complaint that's about to come up. The problem with that is it doesn't specify the complaint, and it already talks about the punishment. It says they were like complainers, Hashem gets angry, and a fire burns in the camp, ostensibly killing people, or at least making destruction. And only then does it talk about the complaint about the meat. So either this is an introduction to the complaint that happens later, which is the one with the meat, or it's another complaint and the Torah doesn't even tell what it is. And that leads us to think that the Jews were in a complaining mood. And they were setting themselves up already in this Parsha for what happens in the next Parsha. Because if you're in a complaining mood and you only see bad and everything's terrible and, there's nothing good about this corona and my gosh, how could this happen? And why is, etc. Then when you hear news, you're only going to hear the bad stuff, which is what happens. When the Meraglim come back, they refuse to listen to Kalev and Yehoshua, who bring positive messages of faith in Hashem. Look what Hashem already did for us. Why do you think it's going to be harder for him to get us into Eretz Yisrael? We can do it. They only heard what the 10 other Meraglim said, not Moshe, not Aaron, all of whom had proven themselves to Am Yisrael. But they didn't listen because they were in an argumentative mood. They were in a disgusted type mood. They were in a complaining mood. And it's very interesting because it doesn't say that they were mitonanim, mitonanim ra, that they were complaining. It says they were mitonanim ra. They were like complainers. I think this is worse. Because if you have a complaint, it could be legitimate. Some of the Jews' complaints in the Midbar were treated seriously, and Hashem answered and doesn't even criticize them for it. But if you are kimitonanim, you're like complainers. It means that you are a complaining person. You have become a complaining person, and a complaining person is looking for what to complain about. It doesn't matter whether it's legitimate. It doesn't matter if there aren't things on the other side. If you want to complain, you'll find what to complain about. And that seems to be what's happening here. The Jews, with all of the good that Hashem had done, with all of the accomplishments, they would look back. Remember, this is only the second year, and it's the beginning of the second year. And they look back and they say, my God, 14, 15, 16 months ago, we were slaves in Egypt. We're free. We own things. We're about to go in a land where we're going to own property. We'll be able to learn Torah without a problem. And now we have a Torah. We have God on our side. He said that we're his nation. But if you're in that mood, if you put yourself in that place for whatever reason, it's not good. The Netivot Shalom, so that's sort of an introduction about the 7 books of Moses, which I find fascinating, and that 2 psukim, are considered a book, which doesn't make a lot of sense to us, and therefore, and we've been brought up on 5 books, right? So Netivot Shalom. Oh, by the way, it's a little bit late, but never too late. I want this Shir to be Le'iloi, the neshama of Baruch Tzvi ben Ephraim Zalman Halevi, a young man, unfortunately, who passed away this week, not of corona as it happens, but he was the husband of a very close friend of my daughter's. And it's very, very sad. So I wanted to give the class as an Ilu Neshama for him. So the Netivot Shalom asked the very question. It says, Vayiva and so Aaron, it goes on, Uvnuchu, right? And it says in Gemara Shabbos, so if you want to know where this idea of 7 books comes from, it's in Kuf Tet Zayin, which is page 117 in the Gemara, Amud Aleph, A. It says, Parsha zu Sefer Chashuvu b'fnei atzmo. This Parsha, these 2 psukim, are an important book in and of itself, Torah mitchaleket l'shiva svarim, because the Torah really is divided into 7 books. So in case you were wondering where I got that crazy idea that the Torah is in 7 books, now you know where. It's in the Gemara in Shabbos, 117, Daf Aleph. So it says, these psukim, therefore, are a book to itself. 2 psukim, it's a book. But he says, we have to understand that. What do we learn from that? I mean, if a book has to be a substantial thing, it has to be meaningful. To be a book of the Torah, you have to have a lot of content. What's in these 2 psukim that gives it the right to be a book of itself? Remember that means it's a book along with Devarim, Vayikra, Shemos, Bereshis. It stands on its own. That's a very strange idea. Especially, he says, Harei Torah nitna lahorot lanu mitzvot. After all, why do we have the Torah? To give us a mitzvot. And in every book of the Torah, there are mitzvot. Even in Bereshis, where there are not a lot of mitzvot, you still have the mitzvah Pru'avu, you still have the mitzvah Brit Milah. So there's not a lot of mitzvot, but there are. Obviously, there are many more mitzvot in Shemot, Vayikra, in Bamidbar, and in Dvarim, but there's mitzvot. That's the point of doing it. In fact, remember, Rashi asks when we start the Torah with Bereshis, why do we start with Bereshis? Says this is a book of mitzvos. We should start with HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, which is about the new moon, and that should be the first thing the Torah talks about, because it's the first mitzvah we got as a nation. So he says, so there doesn't seem to be any mitzvah in Vahi ben Soaron. He says, there are things in the Torah that talk about actual mitzvah, because after all, even if the Torah is a book of mitzvot, there's a lot of other stuff in it. There are stories, there is warnings, there are speeches, there are events. There's a lot going on in the Torah. Descriptions. If it was just mitzvah, have a code. 1, 2, 3, unto 613. You've got a book of mitzvah. So he says that in the book, yes, it is a book of mitzvah, but in the background of the mitzvot are also things that give us musar, derech Hashem, how to keep mitzvot. It's not enough to give somebody a dry list of mitzvot. You need to give them the background in which these mitzvot are going to be kept. Because also, what is the purpose of mitzvot? The purpose of mitzvot, he says, don't forget this is Hasidish, but I think it's also relevant to everybody who's even not a Hasid, which is why I teach this stuff, because I'm not a Hasid. Well, maybe a little. What's the purpose of mitzvot? Just to be mitzvah bots? I just heard about chat bots, so we can be mitzvah bots. We do mitzvah, like in a robot. Do a mitzvah, do a mitzvah, do a mitzvah, count them, check them off. No. Get close to Hashem. The mitzvot are the way that we imitate Hashem in this world and get close to Hashem in this world. So he says that the Rebbe Mikuzhnitz said on the Passow Vahi ben Soaron. Now, again, this is Hasidish Torah. So the Rebbe Mikuzhnitz is going to take what we might consider liberties, Hasidish liberties with the Pasuk. He says, what's in Aron? The Aron held the Luchot, and Aron holds holy words, holy Torah. He says, every Jew, he starts with Talmidei Chachamim, but every Jew is a Torah. We say that. Every human being, every Jewish human being is a Torah in and of himself. And therefore, he says, any Jew who has Torah within him, he's like the Aron that has in it the Torah. What makes the Aron not just a gold box? If it were empty, it would be a gold box. A very beautiful one, but a box. What made the Aron important is it held the Luchot. Some say even the entire Torah. Some say even the broken Luchot. And there are other items that were in it. It was a very, very full box. In fact, there are even diagrams showing how did everything fit in there, because we know the dimensions of the box, and it seems that they put a lot of stuff in there. He says that everything, that's what makes an Aron Kodesh. What makes us Kodesh? The Torah within us. The Torah that we have within us. That's what makes us Kodesh. Otherwise, we're bodies, physical, nothing, animal, no different. We have the Tselem Elokim, and we have the Torah within us. And he goes on to say, this is still the Rebbe Mikuzhnitz. Whoever wants to get close to Hashem Yitbarach has to go through nisyonos, tribulations, difficulties. It's very interesting because that's what we just learned about Megillat Ruth. It says, why is Megillat Ruth read on Shavuot? We know many reasons. One is because it's at the time of the giving of the Torah, and the Torah is only acquired by nisyonot, by tribulations. And therefore, since the book of Ruth has many tribulations, the famine and the difficulties and the death of the husband and the death of the two brothers. We need to learn that life is full of tribulations. And for the one who wants to get closer to Hashem, you need that, because whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? The only way we can rise from one level to the other is through tribulations and trials. Particularly, the bigger you are, the harder they are. So we should be lucky. We should consider ourselves lucky that we're not so big, some of us, because the bigger you would be, the bigger the trials are. He says, but as soon as somebody overcomes a trial, he goes up on a level that he couldn't have gone up before. Because it says in the Medrash in Reshis Rabbah, Shahanisayon hu bechinat natata l're'echa nes lahoses. Says that you gave to your Yereim, the people who have fear of you, meaning God, a nes lehipnoses. So the letters nun samech have many, many interesting possibilities. By the way, we've been talking about nasoa, to travel. That's what came up right before this. We were talking about moving. A nes is a miracle. A nisayon is a test. A nes is also a banner, like on a ship, which gives messages or identifies what kind of ship it is. And to lehipnoses means also to prove something. And tests are often to prove. That's why Hashem nisa et Avraham. So the question there is by the Mefarshim, I forget which one, says that this was a nes in all kinds of things. It was a test, it was a nisayon, but it was also a powerful message. It was a banner. It was a way of proving who this Avraham was, why he was worthy of being the Av of our nation and of others. So he says, and this way, the things that we do when we overcome nisyonot is an honor to Hashem, and he can be proud of us. He can display us. Look at my people. Look at this person. He had this difficulty and he accomplished it. So in the time, but in the time of tribulations, we often lose ourselves. Sometimes we lose our sense of reason. We're so distressed over what's going on. We're not thinking straight. And that's a nisayon in and of itself. He says, and therefore, we need shmirah gdola v'chizuk. At a time of tests and of difficulties and of tribulations, we need extra care. And that's what's being asked for here. It says when a Jew is in tribulations, and this is how he understands it. Vayhi bin soa ha'aron. When this Aron, the Jew, the Talmid Chacham, or the regular Jew, Vayhi bin soa, as we travel through life with our nisyonot, Vayomer Moshe. So what is Moshe saying? He says, he's talking about Jews traveling through difficulties. He says, when that happens, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Hashem, get up Hashem, and help them that they shouldn't fall. In fact, do more. Yitchazku v'yalu yoter v'yoter. V'yafutzu oivecha. V'yanusu misanecha pianecha. If you are there, Hashem, for them, and you help them, they will then have the ability and the courage and the level to get rid of your enemies. So it's a win-win situation, Hashem. The people are having tests. Help them through these tests. I know you're the one who imposes the tests on them, but it's for their own good. But it's hard. It's hard to go through these tests. So Hashem is saying, Kuma Hashem, get up Hashem, help your people through these tests. Give them boy, give them a back to lean on, give them a little push in the right direction, make things just a little bit easier. Help them get through, because when they do, then you will benefit, because all your enemies, Amalek, whoever it is, deniers, the nations that don't believe in you, the Ovdei Avodah Zarah, then the people will have the ability to do with it. So it says that why do we get nisyono? Wouldn't it be nice if maybe life was easier? I think many of us would say, yeah, I could live with that. Because we all Jews come to the world for a shlichut. We all come with a mission. Every Jew comes with a mission, a unique mission. Every Jew has a unique mission in the world. As Chazal said, this is in Bamidbar Rabbah. It says, there is nothing more beloved to God than a shaliach. Remember, a shaliach is a messenger. Hashem is sending us as messengers in the world to bring something in the world so that the world is a better place and more ready to accept Hashem. And he says, and especially that messenger is a worthy and loyal messenger. If you send somebody to do something, and the first thing that goes wrong, he's supposed to send something very important to an apartment. It's a very important package. He can't find the address. He says, forget about it. I didn't find the address. He goes home. He's furious. I told you this is an important package. Why didn't you ask somebody? Then he asks somebody, and they send him. He finds out that people moved. He says, well, I guess that's the end of it. He said, I'll never find it. He goes away. And then the person who sent him said, but I told you this is life and death. Did you ask anybody where he moved? Understand? In other words, they're sent for shlichut. And there are going to be obstacles. Because the more important it is, the more difficult the obstacles sometimes are to make us stronger. Show, to prove. We don't take this lightly. The messenger who quits right away takes his job very lightly. Probably never keep it. One who shows how much he's willing to go through, do what he's supposed to do, is the one that Hashem loves. And you'll probably like him too. And sometimes they're very, 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 very difficult. And he says, help them. It says in Akdamot, which we just had again, I will not read the Aramaic. I wonder if anybody ever reads the Aramaic or if anybody ever reads Akdamot. You read it in Shul. I get the feeling that, especially if you've been up all night, that's your chance to catch a few winks. I know it's worked that way for me. Anyway, but there are Hebrew translations. There are good English translations. I'm going to tell you what the Hebrew translation is. If you want to look it up in Akdamot, which is in the beginning in alphabetical order, it's under ayin. So it says, Adav Yakar, I'm not going to read it to you, but in Hebrew it says, you are beloved to me, meaning even more than the angels, because you serve me and also give me unity. You give me a chativa. Explain that in a minute. During the day, when it's light and when it's dark. So I looked it up. This is not the Nativot Shalom. He says, how do we give God unity when it's light and when it's dark? We say Shema Yisrael, twice a day, morning and night. We proclaim the unity of Hashem, and then he pronounces our unity. Goy Echad Ba'aretz. You are my nation, my chosen nation, a unique one nation in the world. He takes it to a different place. He says, you serve us You serve when it's light and when it's dark. He says serving God when it's light is when it's light, when it's not so very difficult, when things are going good, when you're in a good mood, when it's easy. And we serve that way, and that's not so hard. But we also have nisyonot that happen in the dark, in times of tribulations, of trials, of Shoah, a corona, because this has not been easy either. It's not a Shoah, but it's certainly not been an easy time. And if you are able to deal with these nisyonot, you will become a greater person. And each time you are able to withstand and to conquer something, you're in a higher place, and your nisyonot will get higher. The Rav Dessler talks about that very much, calls it the battleground. He said, when you are battling for a certain quality or to keep a certain mitzvah, and you get to the place where you are, don't rest on your laurels, because that's not your battleground anymore. You're not getting any credit for that anymore. You have to move on to the next one. I have never eaten a cheeseburger, at least not a real one. But people who have, right, after a while, they really move on from it. And they're probably, for most people, things that they did once, ate once, did once. Listen, I've done plenty of things, even though I didn't eat cheeseburgers. There's certainly other things I did that today I couldn't imagine doing. And there are people who ate cheeseburgers who today would not be able to eat a cheeseburger. You don't have to be proud of not eating a cheeseburger. I'm certainly not proud of eating a cheeseburger because I never did. I don't know what it tastes like. I'm not excited. So that's not my battleground, but it might be somebody else's. But once they've conquered that battleground, they go on to the next one. So he says, what's the second pasuk though? So now we've dealt with the first one. The second one is Uvenuchu Yomar Shuva Hashem Rivavot Afei Yisrael. He says when a Jew does accomplish overcoming a nisayon, that's in part of the process of conquering his Yetzer Hara, and that's in the category of Sur Meira. We have Sur Meira v'asei tov. Sur Meira, move away from evil, get rid of it, fight it. That's the Sur Meira. But that's not the end of our job. That's only the negative part. The negative part of ourselves is not to get stuck in bad places, not to do averot. But that's not the goal of any person. That's the background. It's the sine qua non. Without it, you can't do. He says, but every time you've conquered something negative, you're supposed to go and do something positive. Sur meira v'asei tov. It's like the Zachor and Shamor of Shabbat. The Shamor is the negatives that would keep us from having a proper Shabbos. But you can keep all of the Shamors and it won't be Shabbos unless you do the positive things, the Simcha, the Oneg, the Kiddush, the Havdalah, all the things which are Zachor, and do it with a proper attitude. You're not going to have Shabbos. You're just going to have a sitting in the dark house and doing nothing. So he's saying here, Shem, if you've done your Sur Meira, you need to do then your Asei Tov. So it says, Uvenucha Yomar. In other words, when you can rest from this particular bad thing, when you fought it, and now you have let's call it a ceasefire, right? Ceasefire is not the end of the war. It's a temporary, okay? Then you're not fighting all the time. Now you have to think, Shuvah Hashem Rivavot Afei Yisrael. Now, how do I get close to Hashem? Getting close to Hashem is done through the mitzvot aseh, through the chesed, through good deeds, through elevating yourself, through more Torah, more everything. And he says that that's why this Sefer is a book in and of itself. Because this tells you There's a song in Fiddler on the Roof. I get a lot of my stuff out of lyrics from shows, just because I happen to have a somewhat crazy memory for lyrics. I've had contests with other people who can remember the lyrics, even of shows I've never seen, but I used to have records with these lyrics. And you could test me sometime. But anyway, so it says, now I have everything. This is one of the songs, and you'll probably recognize it if you know Fiddler. Now I have everything. Not only everything, I have a little bit more. Besides having everything, I know what everything's for. And I think that that's really what the idea behind here is. The everything in the mitzvot, the everything of this Torah. But here he's saying, this is what it's for. It's for you in your travels through life, individually, but also for Am Yisrael, in your travels through life, to know what the goal of what you're working for. Your goal is to overcome negativity, negative traits, averot, etc., with the help of Hashem, which Moshe is invoking here. But then don't sit on your laurels. Oh, I didn't do this, and I didn't speak Lashon Hara. Really? Very nice. Do you speak Lashon Tov? Do you compliment people? Do you make other people feel better? It's no big deal to walk around with your lip. Well, it would be a big deal for me, but to keep your mouth shut all the time? Some people can do it, not me. But talk positively. Make people feel good with your words. Teach Torah, learn Torah, give compliments, ask people how they are, especially now. Because now we're dependent a lot on words when we can't use hugs and kisses that we often do. So this is what we need to do. We need to do all of this because that's what it's all about. We're traveling through life. We all are. My daughter said something very nice. I've already put it into one of my letters from the planet Corona. If you get it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, never mind. Anyway, she said yesterday, my daughter is very organized. She's very math oriented. She has 6 kids, Kanahara, and has programs, what they're going to do. She says, forget it. It's all gone. Sends the kids to school one day, they're back the next day. She doesn't know what's going to be, what's open, what's not open, what used to be open isn't open anymore. She used to do certain things. Her husband had a different job. Now he's working from the home. Everything has changed. She says, when I wake up in the morning, I don't know what's going to be. I've never been so aware, and I agree with her, that I do not know what today's going to bring. I don't know what the news is going to tell me here, elsewhere. I don't know what things that started one way have now turned around the other way. When we think of what's been going on the last few months, I think the most common phrase, and I think it's appropriate, we don't know, you don't know, I don't know, nobody knows. Hashem knows. Vizehu. My daughter says, when I wake up in the morning, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going to end up. I don't know what's going to be. I say, today I'm going to be an Eved Hashem. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to serve Hashem. I'll do mitzvahs in the best way I can. I'll be the best kind of person I can be today. I'm going to try to be, no matter what happens, someone that Hashem can be proud of and say, that was a good day. You put in a good day. And we have to think as we go through our days, what will make this a good day? Whether I'm out, whether I'm in, whether I'm feeling well, whether Nebuch, I'm not feeling so well. Hopefully that's not true for anybody. Whatever it is, whether it's a Shabbos, whether it's a weekday, whatever it is, we need to say, how do I make this day? In other words, we say that about Omer. Omer is not counting the days, but it's making the days count. And that's true after the Omer too, trust me. It's true all year round. So I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. And now you know something that not a lot of people do. You can also, thank you, you could also ask people, do you know how many books there are? How many books there are in the Torah? phase 5, you say, well, there's another possibility. I assure you, not everybody you talk to will know that, so you'll seem very smart. Have a Shabbat Shalom. It's been enjoyable. This is one of my most pleasurable hours of a week. So thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom. See you soon. Hopefully.
Thank you so much, Chaya. On behalf of the participants, thank you. It was a lovely shiur.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Linda. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to
Shabbat Shalom, everybody who I can't see and who I can't see. Good luck. Have a wonderful week.
All the best.